Hey everyone, this is Jay Tahoe here, and today we're going to be looking at the question, do video games help your cognition? Well, me and a study from WebMD says yes. So let's explore. In this article titled Some Video Games May Boost Brain Flexibility, they find that some action games actually increase the speed of decision making. And I'm going to link this study in the description, as well as some other things that I'll throw in there for you too. But yeah, there's several articles that state that video games can actually improve critical decision making, as well as spatial reasoning and awareness. So some pretty interesting stuff. But I have my own anecdote that I'd like to share. So when I was a kid, I actually had some trouble learning how to read. By first grade, I could basically only spell three-letter words like the and cat. And I was actually in speech therapy, I remember, I think in kindergarten and first grade, because I had trouble pronouncing things like three and Philadelphia. I forget what those call, diphthongs? Something like that. You English majors, correct me. But anyway, I couldn't pronounce, I would say free and Philadelphia. I couldn't make f and th noises. So I had a lot of trouble, with that. I was never diagnosed with any type of learning disability, but I definitely was behind my peers when it came to reading. And the interesting thing was that in third grade was the year I had, my parents were kind of like anti-video game in the beginning. It was around like, kindergarten, first grade, second grade is when my friends and we were all talking about like, Super Nintendo. And then I think it was first grade, 1996, so that's when the Nintendo 64 came out. By Christmas 1998, my parents finally caved, and I got a Nintendo 64 for Christmas. And the interesting part was that when I took the English language, I think they called it the ELA test here in New York, I had gone from struggling with reading comprehension to 90th percentile. I remember they wanted to put me in like special classes because I scored really well on that test. And I believe that my motive, it wasn't a matter of not being able to read well and pronounce words well, it was a lack thereof of motivation. Because at the time, Nintendo 64 games mostly didn't have voice acting. A lot of it was text-based. If you've ever played like a text-heavy game, like The Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, even like Super Mario 64, you had to read to, understand the game objectives. So me wanting to, succeed in the game and do better because I'm an 8-year-old kid, and that's, what other goals do I have at the time? It gave me that motivation to learn how to read, and actually greatly expanded my vocabulary. And, I've read a few studies that there's actually a link between spatial recognition and reasoning and pattern recognition, and people who play video games. It's sort of like, the puzzles found in a Zelda game. I think that these actually kind of give you a good framework for like logic puzzles, later on in life. For example, I've talked to you guys that I'm pretty good with, mechanical stuff. I can disassemble a lot of electronics and, put them back together without seeing the instructions. So I think that a lot of games like this, really laid the framework, in the way that you think to solve the puzzles in these games, sort of directly applies to things like that you'd encounter in real life. Whereas, you had like a very text-heavy game like, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, that, there's, you're not going to get through this game without having a good, solid reading comprehension. Then you have games like Super Smash Bros. Melee that just involve an incredible amount of strategy, and not only strategy, but also lightning-fast reflexes and inputs. They say to be able to play this game competitively, you have to have about seven accurate inputs per second. I mean, most people are not able to do things like that at all. There's a whole competitive community around this game, and I highly suggest checking it out. It's very, very entertaining. And it comes with its unique players, people from all around the country, all walks of life, who are good at this game. But the amount of technical ability in order to play this game on a competitive level is just really incredible, and I consider it the meta of competitive gaming. Here's an example of like the game played, at full speed, the amount of inputs that you'd need to put in. So Super Smash Brothers Melee, definitely, like, not only do you have to be quick, but it also involves a lot of strategy as well. By the way, a great way to test how fast your input reflexes are, there's a website called 10fastfingers.com that'll give you a 1 minute typing test. So you can see here, the last time I took this test, I scored 95 words per minute, which was in the top 8%, and I did 479 inputs in 1 minute, making 5 mistakes. Well, just those 5 mistakes alone would disqualify me from being a competitive Super Smash Bros. Melee player. So just to be clear, on this site, I scored top 8%, and that's still nowhere near good enough to play this game at a competitive level. But if you guys want to see, how fast you can type and how accurate you are, try 10fastfingers.com. I will put a link in the description of the video as well. And, I'm probably going to date myself and just sound like I'm old and out of touch by saying this, but I really do think that, the gaming of the time, like in the 90s, really encouraged more critical thinking. Like, there were a lot of RPGs, that were strategy involved in order to beat the game. Whereas, like, yeah, I guess those games exist now. I've kind of become out of touch with modern gaming. I consider myself more of a retro gamer. I've got a N64 still set up in my living room. I've got the Retro Duo to play NES and Super NES games. I mean, hey, all these games, you can always download an emulator and play them on your computer. But I think games, the sense that I've gotten is that gaming today has gotten more about, hey, good, it's more graphics and story focused rather than on the actual gameplay itself. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if the video games, I would say, are at their core just a mode of entertainment. They're a medium of entertainment. But I do think that the games of the past did encourage more critical thinking and imagination. But that could just be my old person opinion. And what's funny is that recently in the comments section, someone challenged me to take an IQ test on psychologytoday.com. And once again, I will put a link in the description so you guys can take this test as well. I don't give it that much credence, so keep in mind this isn't any type of official test or anything. But I ended up scoring, I guess, my overall score was 117, which was 87th percentile. So I guess, yes, that is a bit above average. But the funny part is that where I really stood out was in spatial reasoning. So on fluid intelligence, which involves spatial, right, which is recognition of visual patterns, right, I scored 125, which was 96th percentile. So again, while this is not official, this is compared against other people who've taken this test. So I find it funny that, they say that gaming is directly linked to, spatial pattern recognition, right, and reasoning. And, I did score very high on this test. So I personally believe that it is due to the time that I spent gaming as a child definitely had an impact on this. So while once again, these results are no type of official capacity, because I know someone in the comments section is going to be like, oh, Jay Tahoe's saying he has an IQ of 117. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, that's what I got on this particular test, and I did score quite above average when it came to spatial reasoning. And, in real life, my reading patterns and cues, that is something I tend to do very well with. As I've said, I complete repairs, on my cars, on my home electronics and stuff like that. A lot of times, especially with electronics, without even really having to look up a guide, I'm able to kind of piece it together and follow the flow of motion, kind of like a puzzle. Ironically enough, on that test, I will tell you, and this is again consistent with real life, I scored 20th percentile in vocabulary. So my vocabulary really isn't that good. And you guys know I'm not really the strongest speaker. You guys know that I stutter and mince my words. And ironically, I don't really have a fear of public speaking. I'll get in front of a crowd and speak. I'll go on, on someone else's stream that has a lot of people watching, and it doesn't really bother me in person or on audio or just on audio. But yeah, I would say I don't have the strongest speaking skills in the world. But spatial awareness, reasoning, and pattern recognition, stuff like that. Um, that's my strong suit, and I do believe that it was directly linked to my experiences gaming as a child, because I did do that for a good time. So I would say that the people who were against video gaming and said it was mind rotting and encouraged violence and stuff. Well, I guess there is such a thing as too much. There is everything in moderation, right? There is a point where it's bad for you. And yes, I've read those articles about people who were legitimately addicted to gaming and actually died because they stayed in their basement and died in a pool of their own urine because they wouldn't even get up to use the bathroom to ignore the game for a minute or two. Yeah, I mean, that stuff is kind of extreme outliers, but that's not going to be, I would say, overall for the average person, that if the game content encourages critical thinking, puzzle solving, is text based or even voice acting, and has has good has a good strong vocabulary built in there, I would advocate that gaming helps cognition. So that's where I'm coming from, and I think that the negative effects of gaming are actually far fewer. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments below what you think, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care, everyone.